Joanna was 25. She had everything going for her. She was beautiful, talented, and had settled in Bristol with her boyfriend Greg. After becoming a landscape architect, she was now living happily in her new flat with Greg, her boyfriend, until one night in December 2010 when she just suddenly vanished. Joanna Yeates was born on the 19th of April 1985 to her father David and mother Teresa Yeates. The family resided in Hampshire in England. Joanna was privately educated at Embley Park near Romsey. Joanna was described as having a brightness about her. She was so happy-go-lucky, she always had time for everyone around her and loved outdoor adventures and anything sporty. And after graduating with a degree in landscape architecture from Whittle College, she received her postgraduate diploma in landscape architecture from the University of Gloucestershire. In December 2008, Joanna met her future partner, another architect, 25-year-old Greg Reardon, at the firm Highland Edgar Driver in Winchester. The couple soon fell in love and moved in together sometime in 2009. The couple settled into their new home in Bristol, where the company had also moved to. Joanna then later changed jobs to work at the Building Design Partnership in Bristol. Joanna and Greg were going strong. Everything in their lives was falling into place. She had a loving family, a great future planned out, her career, and in 2010, the couple moved to a flat in the city's Clifton suburb. It was a large house that had been subdivided into several such flats. It was now 2010. The night was Sunday, December the 19th. Greg had been away in Sheffield for the weekend, and Joanna had enjoyed having the flat to herself. She'd been preparing for Christmas, buying presents and meeting up with friends. But on that Sunday evening at 8 p.m, Greg finally pulled up outside the couple's flat. He collected his things and walked inside to their home, but to find it in darkness and Joanna not there. Greg had been trying to contact her by phone and text all day, for a day or so in fact, but without success. So while he sat and waited for Joanna on the sofa, he tried to call her again, but instead of hearing the faint ringing, he was shocked to hear the mobile phone ringing from inside the room where he was. He searched around, listening to the ringing tone, trying to work out where it was coming from, when he found it stuffed into one of her coat pockets, hung up in its usual place. So Greg searched the flat again looking for Joanna, thinking maybe he'd just missed her the first time. She never went anywhere without her phone, but he couldn't find her. As Greg searched the flat, he found Joanna's purse, her car and flat keys were also there. This was just so weird. He could not wrap his head around why she would go anywhere without all those items. But that was not all. The cat that they shared would not stop meowing, and as he fed it, it appeared to be ravenous, almost like it had not been fed for a few days. Shortly after midnight, Greg decided he couldn't wait any longer, so he contacted the police to report Joanna missing. Then, despite it being late, he also called Joanna's parents to tell them what was going on. Investigators looked into Joanna's life. They spoke to family, friends, and work colleagues to build up a timeline as to when she was last seen. Soon they determined that Joanna had spent that Friday evening on the 17th of December with work colleagues at the Bristol Ram pub on Park Street, leaving at around 8 p.m. to begin the 30-minute walk home. She told friends and colleagues that she was looking forward to spending the weekend alone, as it would be her first weekend without Greg. She planned to spend the time baking in preparation for a party that the couple would throw in the following week, and also Christmas shopping. Police pulled the CCTV on Joanna's route home. They saw Joanna on CCTV at 8:10 p.m. after leaving the pub. She was then seen leaving a Waitrose supermarket without purchasing anything. Police also pulled Joanna's phone records that showed that after leaving the Waitrose, she phoned her best friend Rebecca Scott at 8:30 p.m. to arrange to meet up with her on Christmas Eve the following week. Then the last known footage of Joanna was recorded at 8:40 p.m. as she was seen buying a pizza from a branch of Tesco Express. She had also bought 2 bottles of cider at a nearby off-licence bargain booze. Greg Reardon and Joanna Yeates, his friends, set up a website and used social networking services to look for her. By now, the town had turned white overnight with a heavy snowfall. Police said that the circumstances as they were reported and as they read them automatically led them to feel that this particular missing persons case led them to believe that something was seriously wrong. A missing persons inquiry was launched and detectives were looking for anything that would lead them to Joanna. On the 21st of December 2010, Joanna's parents and Greg made a public appeal for her safe return at police press conference. In another press conference broadcast live on the 23rd of December by Sky News and BBC News, Joanna's father commented on her disappearance. "I think she's been abducted after getting home to her flat," he said. "I have no idea of the circumstances of the abduction, obviously, but because of what was left behind, I do feel sure she would not have gone out by herself, leaving all these things behind, and she was taken away somewhere." Detectives found no sign of the pizza that she'd bought that night or its packaging, but both bottles of cider were in the flat, one of them partially consumed, so it's thought that she got home okay. But there was also no evidence of forced entry to the flat or a struggle. Investigators began to examine the possibility that Joanna may have known her abductor. Then, on the 25th of December, a couple walking their dog along Wood Lane, near to a golf course and next to the entrance to a quarry in Fairland, approximately 3 miles from the couple's home, found a fully clothed body of a young female, laid curled up on her side, left at the side of the road, and partially covered in snow, meaning that she had been left unseen for days. Her body now frozen, and it was Christmas Day. Her family could not understand why anyone would want to do this. First of all, it was up to Joanna's parents to identify her before an examination of her body took place, where it was later determined that the cause of her demise was manual compression to the neck. There were also signs that Joanna had fought for her life, and crucially, pathologists were able to recover small amounts of DNA from her body. The examination of her body also confirmed that she did not eat the pizza she had purchased, and it was not found in her stomach contents. It was not thought that sex was a motive. Police now spoke out on the news to confirm that the investigation into missing Joanna Yeates was now that of a murder investigation. Police also asked if anyone had found an odd sock or this pizza box that were both missing from the scene. They also hoped that by finding these it may help locate the perpetrator. The news captivated the nation and the hunt was now on for this perpetrator. Witnesses came forward to police. One young woman attending a Christmas party at a neighbouring house on the same road as the couple on the night of Joanna's disappearance recalled hearing 2 loud screams. This was apparently shortly after 9 p.m. and they seemed to be coming from the direction of Joanna's flat. Another neighbour who lived behind Joanna's home said that he heard a woman's voice scream, "Help me," although he could not recall exactly what time the incident occurred. Now, officers removed the front door of Joanna and Greg's flat to check for clothing fibres and DNA evidence, and investigators now examine the possibility that the perpetrator had entered the flat before Joanna had even returned home. But when detectives knocked on Joanna and Greg's immediate neighbour's door, Dutch national Vincent Tabak, he claimed that he had not heard anything, and Vincent Tabak's flat was later searched, but police found nothing there. Seemingly out of the picture, he headed to the Netherlands with his girlfriend for the new year. Greg Reardon and Joanna's family visited the site of the discovery on the 27th of December, and funeral arrangements were delayed as investigators retained the body. The pathologist, Nat Carey, consented to the release of Joanna's body on the 31st of January 2011. The investigation, called Operation Braid, comprised of 70 detectives, uniformed officers and civilian staff, under the direction of the Detective Chief Inspector Phil Jones, a senior officer with the Avon and Somerset Constabulary's Major Crime Investigation Unit. It became one of the largest police operations in the constabulary's history. Inspector Jones urged the public to come forward with any information to help catch this perpetrator, especially potential witnesses who were in the vicinity of Longwood Lane in Fairland where her body was found. Inspector Jones said that officers had been inundated with thousands of calls and were exhausting every lead and avenue that they were provided with. Police examined over 100 hours of surveillance footage, along with 293,000 tonnes of rubbish seized from the area in and around where Joanna and Greg lived. Crime Stoppers offered a £10,000 reward for information, leading to an arrest and conviction, while the Sun newspaper offered a £50,000 reward. Authorities advised people living in the area to secure their homes and warned women not to walk alone in the dark. Speaking on the 29th of December about the murder investigation, Joanna's father said, "I fear that whoever did this to my daughter will never hand themselves in, but we live in hope that the police will catch whoever is responsible." The police gathered surveillance video from the Clifton Suspension Bridge, which forms part of the most direct route from the crime scene to the Clifton suburb where Joanna and Greg lived. Now, the footage was of poor quality, making it impossible to clearly distinguish individuals or car registration numbers, but investigators were aware that the perpetrator could have used an alternative bridge across the River Avon, less than a mile to the south, to avoid CCTV coverage. The police searched Greg Reardon's laptop computer and mobile phone as part of standard procedure, and Greg was ruled out as a suspect and then treated as a witness. Senior officers from the investigation asked for assistance from the National Policing Improvement Agency, which provides expertise for difficult cases. And on the 4th of January 2011, a clinical forensic psychologist who had previously been involved as a criminal profiler in other high-profile murder cases joined the investigation to help narrow down the number of potential suspects. Shortly after 7 a.m. on the 30th of December, Christopher Jeffries, Joanna's landlord, who lived in another flat in the same building, was arrested on suspicion of taking Joanna's life. He was one of the few people who had a spare key to Joanna and Greg's flat, a loner, someone who kept himself to himself. The press went into overdrive, telling the world about his arrest and painting him as the person responsible for this crime. He was taken to a local police station for questioning, while forensic investigators inspected his flat with a fine-tooth comb. 3 hours after his arrest, detectives received a call. It was Vincent Tabak, Joanne's immediate next-door neighbour. He described having new information. He told officers that he could remember Christopher Jeffries being parked on the driveway in a certain position the night before Joanna went missing, and then the following day it was parked facing the opposite direction. Police felt that this information was crucial, so while a senior detective granted investigators a 12-hour extension to the arrest, enabling them to hold Christopher Jeffries in custody for additional questioning, police subsequently applied to magistrates for a further extension and were granted until the 31st to the 1st of January. Investigators were now able to detain him for up to 96 hours. So on New Year's Eve, while all this was happening, police quickly booked flights to the Netherlands to meet up with Vincent Tabak and interview him with this new information, but his version of events seemed confused. There were details of his account that were concerning the female officer interviewing him. He was vague in certain areas, but over-interested in other areas, such as what they had in regards to forensic examination, leaving officers concerned over him as a witness and his intentions. But that was not all. He was very reluctant to give his DNA at the end of the process, which again made alarm bells ring for detectives. Back in England, Joanna's other neighbour, Christopher Jeffries, was being released on bail, and after the DNA taken from him was tested against the profile taken from Joanna's body, they realised that Jeffries was entirely innocent. He retained legal services to act on his behalf, and on the 4th of March the following year, police released him from bail and stated he was no longer a suspect. He subsequently won an undisclosed sum of damages for defamatory news articles published against his arrest, and received an apology from the Avon and Somerset police for any distress caused. In January 2011, a reconstruction of the case was filmed in Bristol for the BBC television show Crimewatch. A specialised firm from the film industry was contacted and asked to reproduce the snowy conditions at the time of Joanna's disappearance. The reconstruction of Joanna's last movements was filmed on the 18th of January, and within 24 hours of news coverage about the production, over 300 people had contacted the police. A breakthrough led investigators to believe that Joanne's body might have been transported in a large holdall or suitcase. Behind the scenes, forensic scientists had spent weeks enhancing the DNA profile from Joanna's body, enabling them to now establish a link between Vincent Tabak and Joanna Yeates. And after Vincent Tabak travelled back to the UK, thinking he was just an innocent witness, on the morning of the 20th of January, the Avon and Somerset Constabulary arrested 32-year-old engineer Vincent Tabak, who lived with his girlfriend in the flat next door to Joanna and Greg. However, authorities declined to reveal additional details while the suspect was initially being interrogated due to concerns over media coverage, as were like with Christopher Jeffries. Now, Vincent Tabak was arrested and his possessions were seized, which included his car, his mobile phone and his laptop. The secrets they contained would be hard for Vincent to explain away. They found 6 days before Joanna's body was discovered, Vincent had been using Google Earth and Street View. He'd been looking at Longwood Lane, in particular the part of Longwood Lane where Joanna's body was later found. Forensics examined his car for evidence, and they discovered in the boot of his car traces of red bodily fluid, which was found to be a match to Joanna. The evidence was damning, and despite Vincent Tabak refusing to answer questions, police now had a better picture of what actually happened to Joanna on the night that she disappeared. Police believed that Joanna had returned home after being seen on CCTV buying the pizza and cider. The cider bottles were found at the home, but at some point Joanna was overpowered by 6'4" Vincent Tabak, who gripped her throat, cutting off her air and causing her demise. That night he bundled her into his boot before driving around looking for somewhere to dump her body. He even texted his girlfriend while he was out in the car, saying, "I'm bored." But Vincent was now struggling to talk his way out of this one, so he stayed silent. 3 weeks after his arrest, Vincent Tabak confessed to a prison chaplain that he had taken Joanna's life. Pleading guilty in court, only manslaughter, shall we say, police felt that he was responsible and he knew what he was doing. Vincent Tabak had moved from Bristol prison because of fears for his safety, and was placed under a life-ending watch at Lone Larton Prison in Evesham. Vincent Tabak's family and friends in the Netherlands started to raise funds for his court defence. Vincent Tabak initially maintained he was not responsible for the crime, claiming that the DNA evidence linking him to the crime had been fabricated by corrupt officers. Now, Vincent Tabak was born in 1978. He was a Dutch engineer who had lived and worked in the United Kingdom since 2007. He was the youngest of 5 siblings, raised in Undon, 21 miles north of Eindhoven. Vincent Tabak's childhood next-door neighbour described him at trial as an intelligent, introverted loner. Now, Vincent apparently studied at Eindhoven University in 1996, graduating with an MSc in architecture, building and planning, and where he began a PhD in which his thesis was a study of how people use space in office buildings and areas. He left university in 2007 and subsequently moved to the United Kingdom after taking a job at a headquarters of an engineering consultancy firm in Bath, and settled into the flat in the town. He worked there as an analyst, a role which required him to examine how people move around public spaces, airports, schools, sports stadiums. While living in Bath, he established a relationship with a woman he had met through a soulmates dating site. She was later described by a newspaper as his first serious girlfriend. He paid tribute to her in the acknowledgements of his thesis. "I am very happy she ended my life," he said. The couple moved to the flat where he was arrested from, in Bristol, in June 2009, although Joanna and Greg, her partner, moved into the neighbouring flat in the same building in 2010. It is thought that she and Vincent had never met prior to the 17th of December. After taking Joanna's life, Vincent attempted to cast suspicion of the crime onto Christopher Jeffries, another man living in the flats, while spending New Year with relatives in the Netherlands. Vincent had used computers to research escort agencies during business trips in the United Kingdom and the States, and contacted several sex workers by phone. He also viewed extreme internet porn, which depicted women being controlled, showing images of them being bound and having things tied around their mouth, held, and then choked. During the investigation, police found images of a woman who bore a striking resemblance to Joanna on his computer. Details of Vincent Tabak's viewing of this porn were not included in the prosecution's case, since the judge believed it did not prove that Vincent Tabak had acted with premeditation. The prosecution's case was that Vincent had compressed Joanna's neck at the flat within minutes of her arrival home, using sufficient force to kill her. The prosecutors stated that Vincent Tabak, around 6'4", used his height and build to overpower her, pinning Joanna to the floor by her wrists. She had suffered 43 separate injuries to her head, neck, torso and arms during the struggle. The injuries included cuts, bruises and a fractured nose. It was said in court that the struggle was lengthy and her death would have been slow and painful. However, he did not offer an explanation for the reasoning behind Vincent Tabak's initial attack on Joanna. Evidence presented that Vincent Tabak had then tried to conceal the crime by disposing of her. The court heard that DNA swabs taken from Joanna's body had proved a match to Vincent Tabak. Samples found behind the knees of her jeans indicated that she may have been held by under her legs as she was carried, while fibres suggested contact with Vincent Tabak's coat and car. Red bodily fluids were found on the wall overlooking a quarry close to where Joanna was discovered. The prosecution also said that Vincent Tabak attempted to implicate another resident of the building, Christopher Jeffries, for the crime during the police investigation. He made internet searches for topics that included length of time a body takes to decompose and the dates of refuge collections in the Clifton area. In his defence, Vincent Tabak claimed that the crime had not been sex motivated and told the court that he had taken Joanne's life while trying to silence her as she screamed when he tried to kiss her. He claimed that Joanne Yeates had made a filthy comment at him and invited him for a drink. He said that after she screamed, he held his hands over her mouth and around her neck to silence her. He denied suggestions of a struggle, claiming to have held her by the neck with only minimal force for about 20 seconds. He told the court that after dumping her, he was in a state of panic. The jury was sent out to deliberate on the 26th of October and returned with a verdict only 2 days later. On the 28th of October 2011, Vincent Tabak was found guilty of taking Joanna Yeates' life by a 10-2 majority verdict. He was jailed for life with a minimum term of 20 years. Passing sentence, Mr. Justice Field referred to an sex element to the killing, but it's still unknown if that is the case. For her family, they live a life without her, with lots of questions as to why anyone would want to do this to their beautiful, intelligent, loving daughter.